All right, my friend. How you doing today?
I'm great. How are you, sir?
I'm very good. Thank you for being here. For everybody that I was saying, you're my first guinea pig with this new format. So I appreciate you diving in and just going head first into the deep end. So thank you for being here.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
So tell me a little bit about, obviously I read some of the information that you sent over about your life and your history and some of the things that you've been through, of which it sounds like it's been a lot. So I want to acknowledge that first and foremost. But what were you hoping to maybe get out of this conversation? Is there a specific question, or is there something that you were hoping to get from spending some time together?
I think just talking about some of the experiences I've had and getting your thoughts on how to handle them moving forward, and just the perspective around those thoughts might be helpful for me.
Yeah. Are you trying to make sense of how your life experiences have impacted you, or are you trying to make sense of what to do with the impact that they've had?
Probably, that's a great question. And I would say both, but probably the first one first would be in that order, first and then the second one.
Okay.
How they impacted me and then what to do with them.
Maybe give 60 to 90 second Coles notes. Do you guys call them Coles notes in America? Are they something else?
No, but we can pretend we're in Canada for a minute.
Okay. Canada has Coles notes, so we'll call them Coles notes. You know what I'm talking about. And give me a little bit of a rundown of what's taken place in your life.
Yeah, sure. So, growing up in a family of five, the youngest of five, being raised by a single mother primarily, grew up in a very wealthy town, but we did not have a lot with regard to money. We were just very lucky to have grown up there. Family and I helped each other through everything, and my mother being the lead for that. Growing up in that home was also an alcoholic home. My father was there for a while until around my age of around 8 or 9. And by that point, my siblings were much older. So I was home for a lot of the tail end of that relationship falling apart, and experienced a lot of that as a child. So what I learned at that time was how to internalize my emotions and how to hold back things and just be quiet. And I didn't want any of that backlash coming my way. So I sort of took that, and then I went from there into just trying to get attention from my mother in a positive way. And I learned to do that by being good and doing things for other people, which I think was wonderful. And I'll never want to get rid of that. However, I think that morphed into something a little more serious once I started to get older and had no sense of identity. And then that behavior, I think, led me to picking up alcohol myself and abusing that terribly from the ages of 17 until 47, I believe. I'll be 6 years sober this year. So that's just a nutshell of it. I won't get into the divorce part and all that just yet, but I'll leave it there for now.
Okay. Divorce from your wife.
Yep. So together for 14 years, married for 7 of those. 2 stepdaughters who I met when they were 3 and 4 years old. And prior to meeting them, I never thought I was going to have children in my life or wanted to, based off, I think, my upbringing. But the moment I met them, I was completely in love with them, and they changed my life in ways I can't explain. And I helped to raise them until they were 16 and 18. Marriage came to a horrific end. We both drank at the time. I had just quit drinking for a year, and some of the behaviors that I had tolerated because I just wanted to be there. I didn't feel like I deserved to have a voice or didn't want to stand up for myself ever. So I just allowed life to go. And my whole focus was just the girls and my dogs and that life. And then when that ended, my ex-wife, she decided that since I finally made that decision for myself, that she was going to find a way to get back at me, which I feel she did when she severed my relationship with my girls. And now it's going on almost 10 years since I've talked to them. And yeah, you said I might open up with this, and this certainly will get me every time.
Well, just, take a breath there and just say what's happening inside.
So that leaves me, not having them in my life, I just feel frozen. I've been able to stop drinking. I've been able to help my siblings with my brother when he was battling his alcoholism, and then finally passing away from it, and be there for them and be a good worker, have a great job, have a great life, have a wonderful fiance and her family, amazing. But with all of that, I feel stuck inside because that part of me, my girls, are not here, and I battle that. So.
I'm just going to pause there one more time, and then I'm going to take you in a different direction, okay?
Sure.
So we won't linger here for too long, but take one more breath and just tune into what's happening inside of you. And just say what's happening. As you share all that, which is a lot. Again, you just gave me that's a lot of pain. So just say what's happening inside of you. Just stay with it for a moment.
What's happening inside me is fighting back the emotions that I think I've held back forever. It just feels like they want to blow up. And I want to let them out. They will seep out, and then I pull them back in. Not willingly. It just sort of happens. But I feel a lot of fear inside, a lot of shame.
Fear about what? Like, if I let myself feel all this,
what else that will bring out? Will that weaken me? Will that lead me to a different path? Yeah, not being strong and succumbing to that. And the shame right now is just stronger. I feel like I've let my girls down, even though there's nothing I can do. I've tried to contact them for 10 years. So.
Okay. Well, say more about letting them down. What do you mean by that?
Always being there for them, growing up, I worked from home, so I was home a lot. Their mother worked nights at a hospital, so, I was daycare, pickup, aftercare, field trips, homework, dinners, showers, reading, all that stuff, all the way through to teenage years, teaching them how to drive and all of that, and protecting them and trying to teach them how to be good humans, basically. And then when I was gone, someone from that town had written to me just because I was still friends with them, and they told me they feel like the rudder had fallen off the ship when I left and left them on some bad paths. And I know they're on great paths now, and I know they're doing well. That's been shared with me, but it's still, I feel shame around something I can't control now that I say it out loud, but yeah.
I mean, that is the unique thing about shame, is that it's usually passed into us. It's usually given to us, and it's oftentimes not ours. We get past shame from mom or dad or circumstances, stories that tell us that we should be able to control the uncontrollable. Mm-hmm. And, one of the things that I think you wrote in the stuff that I had everybody fill out was that you said, these challenges have led me to be afraid of who I truly am. And that kind of hit me. And I was wondering if you could just say a little bit more about that, because I think that's kind of at the core of what we're talking about.
I feel this is hard to verbalize or communicate. Who I truly am is someone who is out here with a kind soul, a kind heart.
Take your time. Let yourself actually feel it.
Yeah.
And if you break down, it's okay. But let yourself genuinely feel it, because it's what you're talking about as a part of who you actually are.
Yeah. It's hard to say because I battle myself with it. There's an internal argument with it. I feel I am a really good person, and I do a lot of good for others and for myself. But deep down, I have a dislike for myself because of the mistakes I've made, some of the bad choices I've made in life, and not letting go of that is really hard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm going to just make a statement, make a little guess around something, and you feel into how true it feels for you.
Please.
Okay. You said these challenges have led me to be afraid of who I truly am. And when I hear your story, what I hear is that a big part of who you truly are is someone who has a tremendous amount of grief. Tremendous amount of grief.
Yeah.
Just a lot. And I don't get the sense that that's actually ever had a place in the world or in yourself fully.
Never, no.
I mean, man, if I had gone through what you've gone through, I don't know. I don't even know.
I was just talking to my fiance about this and said, she's always supporting and trying to get me to feel these things. I realized I hadn't processed, the death of my father when I was 19, to my mother, who was the head of our household, to burying my brother, my big brother, to the loss of my girls. So,
yeah, it sounds like they were just the final straw.
Yeah,
and your system kind of shut down. That freeze responses, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, man.
Yeah.
When we have that much grief in our life that's unprocessed and sort of unfelt, it's not that you haven't felt it. It's that it sounds like it's been very, very present, but you haven't really allowed yourself to go into it.
That's 100% correct.
Yeah. So that causes us to freeze. That'll cause our system to shut down. And, obviously, I mean, I want to just say the obvious thing, which is, I'm going to say two obvious things. First, I'm going to say, just good job, man.
Thank you, brother.
You're here. Jeez.
Yeah.
Jeez. You're still standing. You're in another relationship. I mean, kudos to you for continuing to keep your heart as open as you could, to continue to try and love and to be there. I'm sure it's not perfect at times, but good work.
Thank you.
That's a lot of grief, and it's a lot of tragedy, and it's a lot of pain. I forgot what the other one is now, so we're going to keep going down this path.
All good.
Oh yeah, there it is. I think the other obvious thing is, these calls are quite short.
Yeah.
It's 15, 20 minutes, and I don't pretend that these are going to solve all life problems.
What do you mean?
Yeah, right. 15 minutes for salvation.
Why am I here? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I'd say it should be like a joke, like a running joke around it, 15 minutes for salvation. I'm sure there's somebody out there that's promising that.
I'm sure.
But, maybe I did say that we could do, maybe we do longer sessions out of these things and dive into some of these parts. But what I want to do is try and give you some direction. Okay. Is that all right?
Yeah, I would love that.
My really strong encouragement is that you find spaces and places where you can let that grief roll. Because it's going to be very hard to unfreeze until that happens.
Do you have suggestions around things like that? Because I've tried a lot.
Yeah. Well, yes, absolutely. There's a great book by Francis Weller called The Wild Edges of Sorrow that might give you some insight. I would encourage you to come out to a men's weekend that I run. Mm-hmm. I think very quickly we could get into that, and I feel very comfortable with working with you on that. And there's good people there. I also run a longer thing. I feel like I'm self-promoting, but it's okay. Let me back up. I want to help support you. I want to help support you. There's another program called the MSLP that I think might be good for you. But You could also look at Francis Weller. He does phenomenal work. He does grief rituals and grief circles. So that could be good. And then the other guy's name, David Kessler, is another man. He does a lot of stuff on grief as well.
Okay.
And so those are just some resources that you can look into. You're going to have to find a space where you're comfortable with. Yeah, let me frame it this way. A lot of men don't let their grief out because they're worried about exactly what you said at the very beginning, which is sort of twofold. One, who will I become if I let this out?
Right.
Am I going to get swallowed by it? Will I ever come out? It's so deep, it's so intense, it's so much. I don't know if I'll ever come out the other side of it. So a lot of men are afraid to go into the depth of their pain and their grief. simply because they're like, man, that feels so intense. I don't know if I'd survive that.
Yeah.
And I want to tell you that if you're held by the right container and the right people, you absolutely will. And you will come out more vibrant and more full because of it. Grief is such an essential part of our existence that we've stripped out the spaces and places from our culture where we would normally go to do what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
The second thing is a lot of men don't let their grief out because of the other part of what you said, which is no one will know how to guide me in that.
Right.
And because it's intense. And so I would just say that in your journey, whether it's me or somebody else, find somebody that you feel really comfortable with in guiding you in that, because what you're talking about is big.
Okay.
Okay. So follow up with me and I'm going to give you a bit of an odd, it's not a challenge. It's just more of an invitation to close this off. Okay. In the next 72 hours, there's going to come a moment, I promise you, because of what we just touched on. I could feel it right there. Like if we had an hour, we could have just taken 5 minutes and gone straight into the grief.
Yeah.
Okay. It was just, you were so there, and I'm proud of you for doing that. In the next 72 hours, you are going to feel that same pull. It's going to be right here. It's going to come right up again. And I just want you to see if you can let yourself bring some of it out. Not a trickle, but like let it out a little bit more.
It's there right now. So I when you went like this, I literally felt it right there.
Yeah. Yeah. And bonus points for having somebody witness it, somebody that you trust. Maybe it's your fiance. I mean, hell, I was going to say you can record me a video, but then I just got visions of like, TikTok and Instagram, people that are like crying in front of their cameras. And I was like, no, that's not
me.
Good. That's
sure.
not good for Scott.
No, it's not me at all, my friend.
Just park in your car, set up your whole contraption.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no.
No. But grief does need to be witnessed. And I think you have a lot of unwitnessed grief. Yeah. And I mean, it's amazing that you are even who you are and done what you've done with all of that grief in tow. So it's a real honor to know you, man.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your words and everything you just said. It went straight to the core. I know you said you wish you had 5 minutes more, but I felt that. I think it's just having you acknowledging that is powerful.
Well, DM me. I respond to stuff on Instagram, or you can email me.
Okay.
You can always email the team from my email directly, and then just let me know. Follow up with me in a couple of days. Let me know how this went, and if you're able to just heed the call and the invitation to the grief.
I'm in the Alliance as well, so I could always ping you in there as well.
Yeah, hit me up there.
All right, my friend. Thank you.
You got it. Thank you so much. All right, my friend. Welcome. How you doing today?
I'm really good, Connor. I'm relishing this opportunity to speak to you, to be honest.
Likewise. It's a pleasure to connect with you. And you've won automatic points in my book because you're wearing a Honda shirt.
Yeah.
Not a Yamaha, not a Suzuki. I used to ride a Honda.
Yeah.
My sport bike was a Honda VTR 1000.
Nice.
And 98. It was a V-twin, dual exhaust, canary yellow.
Yeah.
Loud as all hell because I tweaked and modified it. But
yeah.
Anyway, neither here nor there.
No.
Tell me a little bit about why you are here, what question you wanted to dig into, or what challenge you wanted to address.
So why I'm here is because about a year ago, just over, sort of really got into my sort of self-help journey, or started to gain more of a curiosity to learn about myself and reasons why I'm feeling this way, or reason why I've got this pattern of behavior. And I came across your content, and I find your content very good, to be honest, very helpful, particularly because I don't have that many male role models in my life, to be honest with you. And a lot of stuff out there is obviously quite toxic, quite chauvinistic, and not really the sort of idea of masculinity I want to subscribe to. But with a lot of your content and a lot of other content that I consume, I guess would be the word, I find it can be, well, two things. First of all, quite overwhelming. And I don't mean overwhelming in terms of emotionally overwhelming. Obviously, there is that side. But I mean in terms of just there's so much to digest. And you're thinking, okay, what does this specifically apply to? And then I also, because there's so much information, I can find it can sometimes seem quite contradictive, depending on a situation. So, I could give you a couple of examples if that might
Please.
help. So, you talked about one of your episodes quite a while ago. You talked about not shaming yourself for, well, just generally, but also you use specifically, I think, porn and weed as examples of if if you're trying to quit that and you're doing well and then you go back into it, don't shame yourself. Don't just, I failed, I can't do that. Like, just accept it for what it is and move on. And that really helped. But then what I found was I was kind of using that as almost like a license to do it, because it's like, it's not actually that bad because, it's all right, I can just start again tomorrow sort of thing. So the approach there you might think is, okay, well, you've got to actually be a bit more tough on yourself, be a bit more disciplined there. But then also, I have a lot of financial issues, so I've been trying for years to try and work and, try and sort my financial issues out, which often means I'm quite burnt out. And then a lot of what you said, and you said it in, I think, one of your episodes recently, stop things to, stop doing in 2025, is stop working so much, stop burning yourself out so much. And it's like, well, but in that situation, I don't really have a choice. Like, I have to work for, there is financial realities that I have to do. So it's like, at what point do you, and I know those are two specific different examples I've just given you, but this is what I'm talking about. It's like the self-leadership of where do you pick this in this situation and where do you pick this in this situation? How do you know when to dive more into that? How do you know when to pull back more into that? So those, I know that's a lot of just stuff I've just thrown at you, and I hope I've communicated that well. But it's just the sort of general confusion of in this specific situation, what is the best thing to do?
Yeah. Well, that's the question I think we're all asking.
Yeah.
And there really isn't a perfect answer. How old are you?
26 later this month.
Yeah. Amazing. I mean, you're very articulate. The fact that you're looking at these things right now in life is amazing. I hope my son at 26 is as articulate and kind and funny, charismatic as you are. And it's really interesting to hear you asking these types of questions. You're on the surface, I think it probably sounds like you're asking a simple question, which is, how do I make the right choice? But I think you're actually asking a much deeper question, which is how do I live the duality of life? And that's a very big question. And because, in part what you're asking is, how do I live in a way that is compassionate towards myself, but still firm and disciplined?
Yeah.
And that's no small task, right? People spend their entire life trying to figure that out. And so just know that what you've sunk your teeth into is something quite meaningful in my books. It might not be to other people.
Yeah.
But for me, this was really a big question. And it was something that I grappled with for years. How do I live the duality of existence? How do I live with compassion and not beat the living crap out of myself for watching porn again, or smoking weed, or drinking, or texting that woman that I know I don't want to text? How do I have compassion for myself for those actions while still being firm and disciplined, and not fall into the kind of shame-oriented punishment that I had used before?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I'm just going to pause there. How is that hitting for you?
Yeah, it's good. It's because I know I have a tendency as well, because of certain childhood traumas and things like that, and I was working with a therapist for quite a while. I've had to stop because I can't afford it. But And what we worked out with him, and I specifically requested for a male therapist as well, which I thought was important. But what I worked out with him is I have a sense that I'm kind of not necessarily being left behind in life, but not achieving what I want to achieve, right? So, and I've worked this out because of my childhood and because of certain other situations. The way I've quote unquote survived that is been always searching for the next thing, always searching for, and it is like the the grass is greener on the other side sort of mentality. But what I find that can be quite, although that gives you hope and drive to achieve and go and do things, it also means you're never satisfied in your current situation. And it also means that, and I found that particularly in relationships as well, that I find I've had relationship difficulties, obviously aside from all attachment styles and all of that, which is, again, this is another thing I was talking to you about just before we came on, is that there's, once you start to scratch the surface of this stuff, you realize that there's a whole world out there. Right? There's a whole, and it can be hard to sort of pinpoint exactly what to give credence to in that moment, because you can get just overwhelmed with so much. Like pick relationships, for example. If you have a conflict in a relationship, you say, okay, is this my attachment style? Is this her attachment style? Is this just a general thing? And you can sort of just overanalyze everything to the point where nothing ever gets done, and you just sort of sit around cuddling yourself in a ball in the corner, not doing anything. And that's obviously not helpful either. So it's I guess it is a much bigger question than perhaps I realised asking, but I guess it's self-leadership is what we're talking about, is knowing what to do in that situation.
Well, okay. Let me just piece together where I want to move here with you. I think you're pointing at something that a lot of men struggle with, which is over-consuming and over-analyzing. And it is so common that when I see this all the time, I did it myself, that when men have some type of, whatever we want to call it, awakening, self-reflective, jarring, some experience either externally or internally that causes them to start to look at themselves in a different way, in a more earnest, truthful, curious, exploratory manner. Especially if it's, a lot of men come into it because something's happened outside of their life, right? They lost a job, their relationship has ended, and the thing that they've been ignoring for a very long time, they now say, okay, I'm going to heed that call. I'm going to go on that adventure. And I'm not going to ignore it anymore. I'm going to start to figure out, why do I feel this way? Why do I make these decisions? How come I keep going down this path of sabotage? Why do I hate myself so much? Why can I not stand who I am? And it's very common that when men start this journey, and I don't know if it's the same for women, but I certainly see this as a really heavy pattern for men, is that we take that intensity that's living inside of us and we direct it at this exploration. And it can lead to a ton of overconsumption and then overanalysis, and take us out of the core of part of the main lessons, which is developing, we'll just call it awareness, okay? Awareness and presence. And it's an incredibly potent attribute that the world needs more of. And it's also incredibly challenging to cultivate and maintain.
Yeah.
Especially when we've had trauma, and I don't know what yours is or what you're talking about necessarily. Maybe we can illuminate that in a second. But overanalysis is an escape hatch for presence. Okay? Overanalysis is an escape hatch for presence and awareness. It's a way of ejecting from the truth of our current moment experience, emotionally, physically, whatever it is, environmentally, right? The circumstances that we're inhabiting. And so it's a protective strategy. And so what I hear in what you're saying is that you have some really strong protective strategies that you deploy to help you not feel what's happening inside of you sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, as you say that, I can feel myself sort of almost like I've been found out. Do you know what I mean? But what's interesting is it's not like I am intentionally doing that. It's not like I'm intentionally deploying these strategies.
Correct.
You know, like you just saying that to me now, I'm like, actually, I feel like there's a deeper consciousness in me that knows I'm doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But now you've just pointed that out to me. It's like, oh, actually, I am doing that. And it's like the first time I've realized I'm doing that.
Good.
And yeah, because and what you said about presence, I find quite interesting, because I have had a sense for quite a while like I'm either living in the past or the future, and not really. Obviously, I'm experiencing the present, but I'm not really there.
Correct.
Yeah.
So let me just say one thing about that I think will be helpful, and it might be hard to hear, okay, but it will be helpful, I think, in the long run, which is that part of the impact of trauma is that it steals the present moment away from us, or it steals us away from the present moment. So part of this symptomology, I guess you could say, or the byproduct of the symptoms of having trauma is that we don't want to be in the present moment, because at some point being in the present moment was brutal, or it was dangerous, or it was threatening, or it was so overwhelming that we didn't know what to do with it, or it was terrifying, or whatever it was, right? Maybe it was sad, maybe whatever. And so part of the healing of that trauma is learning how to pull ourselves back into the present moment and be with whatever is present, whatever is there happening inside of us. Because it's easier to eject. And, there's different forms of it, right? There's sort of more extreme forms like disassociation. And then there's just, I don't say just because it's it's very hard to contend with sometimes. Yeah. Then there's the overanalyzing, right? Getting caught in the ruminating thoughts that sort of grab a hold of us and pull us to the past or the future and keep us there. And again, it's a protective strategy from what's happening in the moment. Yeah. And so again, trauma both hinders and infringes on our capacity to be present, because it feels hard and overwhelming, and it can just feel hard to bear. Now, I've worked with a lot of people who have very intense trauma, and it's hard for them to bear being present in the moment. It's actually just it's a tax on them. It requires a tremendous amount of effort. And that is part of the work. It's part of the healing process, is to bear whatever is there inside of your heart and your body and your mind that your brain and your psyche have said, move away from that. That's a threat. Don't feel that. Don't think about it. Don't experience it. Get away from it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. But it's one thing understanding this, it's the other actually doing it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, good, correct. So take a breath for me in through the nose and exhale at the mouth. And then just take 2 more of those, just like that. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Good. And when you're ready, take your time. You can close your eyes if you want, or you can do it with your eyes open, whatever you're most comfortable with. Just make a statement about what's been happening inside of you as we've been having this conversation. What's been going on inside of you?
A sense of fear, I would say. Fear, and also shame slash embarrassment slash feelings of inadequacy.
Okay, so take another breath. And then again, when you're ready, say what you're afraid of.
I guess never being able to overcome the things that I'm avoiding or running from.
Which are what? What are you avoiding and running from?
Just dealing with the trauma, dealing with the feelings, learning how to integrate that. And just not being able to achieve what I want to achieve.
Another breath. So my trauma is an obstacle to my future.
Yeah.
My trauma is an obstacle to my future self, my potential, my capacity.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I guess I'm worried that I don't have the strength to actually overcome it.
Well, that is normal. That is normal. And so take another breath in. Stay with it for a second. Nothing for you to overcome. Only things that you need to learn how to be with. Truths inside of you. So another breath. One of the main challenges in trauma is that it creates a situation where we experience something either repeatedly or in the moment that is overwhelming and feels like it's too much for us to handle. And my guess is that based on what you're telling me, that whatever happened to you was too much for you to handle in that moment.
I guess also there is resentment that I'm still being affected, even though I'm not in that physical situation anymore. I'm still being affected by it, which makes me resentful.
Okay.
That I had to experience that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So another layer. I hate my trauma.
Yeah.
Right? I hate this thing. I hate this feeling. I don't like it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you a frame and then we'll see if we do another little piece of work because I don't have a lot of details and information on what you're talking about. And I don't know, for time's sake, how deep down the rabbit hole I want to take you because I also want to be mindful of what you've experienced and not airing all that out because we didn't talk about whether or not we were going to talk about any of that.
Yeah.
You came in with a very different question and I want to be respectful of that.
Yeah.
But I'm going to give you some direction. Okay? Direction. Right now, the story is my trauma is my obstacle.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a wall and not a door. And what I would encourage you in terms of how you can start to frame it and start to view it and look at it is, what if my trauma is the doorway? And what lesson, gift, etc., can I extract from it? Or can I see in it? And that might be very challenging. And I'm not saying that you have to do that immediately. I'm not even saying that a month from now you'll have anything. But to just see if you can view it as a doorway instead of a wall. Because the wall is overwhelming. You know, it's like, I always imagine, do you ever watch Game of Thrones?
Mm-hmm.
I always imagine trauma creating like, you know, that ice wall, that like 800 or 900 foot ice wall. It's like coming across that is going to feel overwhelming. But even in that ice wall, there was a door and there was an elevator and it led somewhere and you could get to the other side.
Mhm.
And yeah, tell me how that lands, in all honesty. Do you hear that and think, that's bullshit? I hate that. F you for telling me that. I
No.
don't want to have to find any gift in this,
So
giant flaming hot mess.
the way that's landed for me is I am aware of, the mantras, the obstacle is the way, and the shadow, doing shadow work and how that holds the answers. And I guess my trauma probably affects me and my whole being more than I think it does. And
Well, tell me how you think it affects you based on what you know.
Self-esteem, I think, is quite low, and my belief to achieve things and also give myself credit for when I have achieved things. Nothing ever seems enough for me, and I am stuck in that mindset of once I get to that point, then I'll be okay. But that point never comes.
Sorry, what's that point?
As in, as always hoping that the future situation will be better than my current situation.
Mm-hmm.
But then obviously things change, and it's like trying to hold on to smoke. It's just always slipping through your fingers all the time, and so it's what I think from this conversation, what I'm understanding is it's more is like you say, it's a that always chasing after that point is a over analysis of and is a coping mechanism, and it's that coping mechanism is easier for me to always be within that mode than it is to just sit with how I am and feel the feelings that are going on inside.
Mm-hmm.
And because for many different reasons, but because it is frustrating, it is also very confronting, and there's a lot of stuff going on which I don't know what the answer is to it, and like you say, you can't keep running away from it. You do have to go into it, and I have been doing that. I do try and do that, and I have made progress. But it is like, when's this going to end?
Yeah. Okay. So take another breath from me. And was what you went through a single event or was it reoccurring?
Reoccurring.
Okay. For a long period of time or?
My entire childhood, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Just stay with what you're feeling. I can see in your eyes that it's just right behind the surface. Like, say what's happening inside of you. We just sort of touch on it.
The way I feel it and the way I've described it to my therapist before is it's almost like viewing something behind frosted glass. Sometimes it gets closer to the glass. Let's say it's like it's a light behind the glass, right? Sometimes it gets closer and it's brighter, but it's still a bit. I can't quite make out what that is. And then when I try and sit with it or try and think about it more, it's an involuntary process. It just gets pushed down again.
Mm.
It gets, yeah.
Are you talking about the details and the imagery of what happened, or are you talking about the emotions and the experience of it?
The emotions and the experience of it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So another breath. What is your perception of what would happen if you let yourself defrost the glass and feel what you know is there?
I'm just confusion. why did that happen? Why did that happen to me? But then in my adult self, I know why that happened. I know the logistics of the reasons why that happened. The unknown of, I always feel like I have to come up with an answer for everything.
Mm-hmm.
I have to try and justify it within my head, come up with an answer. And I even did it then, and that was an involuntary thing that,
No, you're good.
And that's what you're talking about, the over-analysis of the coping mechanism, because I can't just sit with it and I can't just think about it because it's so unpleasant. And
Well, that's the catch. I'm going to make a really important distinction because here's what I'm really talking about. I'm telling you and asking you and moving you towards not thinking about it, actually experiencing it, actually feeling it, not the trauma, not the events of what happened, but actually feeling the ripples and the waves and the effect that you've been left with. Because you have been thinking about it endlessly. And of course, you're afraid of actually feeling the impact of it. That's normal. That's okay. And I think when that fear bubbles up, you move back into analysis, trying to find the reason. Why? How come? Mostly irrelevant.
Yeah.
So take another breath for me, because what we're talking about is pretty big.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm also mindful in this moment of moving you towards something without follow-up.
Yeah.
Okay. If we were working together right now in a session one-on-one, I know exactly where I'd take you. And I know exactly what it would look like. And I think you do too. I think you know exactly, like, we're right there. But it's like we're right on the edge. But I'm super, super mindful that I don't think that you've allowed yourself to move into what we're talking about in a way that has been held and contained in a proper way. I think you've thought about it a lot, but it doesn't sound like you've let yourself feel about it a lot.
But I agree. But this is the I think the nub of it, and this is the problem: is I have not yet been able to actually allow myself to think that.
I know.
To feel that. Yeah.
I agree. You're spot on. You're spot on. And when you decide to do that, things will start to shift. It will be brutal and it will be hard and it will not be easy. It'll probably be messy. There'll probably be a ton of anger and a ton of grief and sadness. Absolutely. And this is another common thing when we've experienced, and again, I'm working off of not knowing actually what happened, and that's okay. I don't need to know the details right now, okay? Very common response. I have some guesses around what you experienced, but very common response for people that have experienced trauma is to not let themselves fully feel the impact of it. One, because it's, it can be, I don't want to say terrifying, but for a lot of people, it's a lot of fear. What's going to happen? Will I be okay? Will it swallow me up? Will I cry forever? Will I ever come out of it? Will I live in depression forever? Will I just be effed up for the rest of my life? Like, those are the stories that happen. But the secondary thing, and this is the really important thing that I want you specifically to know, is that when we've experienced trauma, oftentimes it's that we were put in a position of powerlessness. To circumstances, to somebody, to anger, to hostility, to unwanted, all kinds of stuff. But we're put in a position of powerlessness where we have no say and we have no control. And what happens when what can not stop, but hinder our healing with our trauma is that we begin to control not allowing ourselves to feel that as a means of regaining some power. So I was out of control when that happened, but I can control not feeling this shit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so that's a very common obstacle that people face with the healing. It's like, well, if I feel this, then that person that did this to me will have won. Or if I let myself feel this, then what I went through will have been true, or I'll have to feel the regret of not having done X, Y, and Z, or whatever it is. And so we have to confront the being out of control there. How does that land for you?
Yeah, it's a lot. It is a lot. Yeah, it is, I guess, it's like what we talked about. It's not being able to, first of all, not being able to control it. And then if you do start to understand it a bit more, try and not necessarily justify it, but rationalize it in your head of all this. These are the reasons why that happened. But that rationalization is also in a way just taking back control of it, because you are justifying it, or you are understanding it more. You're contextualizing it rather than feeling it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you have something working against you in the best way possible, which is that you're quite smart and you're quite quick. And that's a beautiful gift. And when we're dealing with something like this, our mind can become extremely adept and competent at compensating for feeling what's actually happening.
It's using logic when you should use emotions.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's ejecting from the truth of your experience. So I'm just going to say that again in a different way, because I really want the point of what I'm saying to land, because this is super important, and I think we'll probably wrap up here. Okay. Yeah. And I'll give you some stuff for moving forward. When we experience trauma, our choice is taken. It's ripped from us. It's very, very common, whether it's a car accident or abuse or whatever it is. It's often that we are put in a powerless position. We do not have choice. And what I'm saying to you is that you have to be the one to choose to go into what you're feeling. I can guide you there. I could even get you there if I wanted to, but that would be improper of me as a practitioner. That would be wrong. Because part of your healing needs to be about you choosing to enter into a really hard experience. You went through a really hard experience, sounds like repeatedly, not by choice. Part of the healing of our trauma is we choose to go into the real hardship of what we've been carrying around by our choice. And that's the reclamation. That's the healing of the trauma. I'm choosing to face this. I'm choosing to feel this. I'm choosing to deal with this. So far, it's been, I'm choosing to control and push this part down because it's frightening. And that is okay. No judgment, nothing wrong on that at all. I'm simply telling you that the next step for you is to choose to move into it. And I would encourage you to choose to move into it with somebody. So my invitation for you is, if you want to get into some of this stuff and you're okay with this format, that you and I could work together for a few sessions like this.
Definitely.
Okay. And I don't have to be the person. I just want to make that super clear. And this might not be the right format. So that's just an invitation for you. Okay. Probably not the conversation you were expecting based off of your question.
No, definitely not. But I think this underpins my initial question anyway.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Well done.
Mm-hmm.
Any final questions for me?
There's no final questions that I can ask now that aren't asking things that we would have to delve into, basically. So, no.
Can I just say something? You're really doing a great job.
Mm-hmm.
You're really doing a great job. I don't have details or context for what you've gone through, but you really have your wits about you. Mm-hmm. And I can tell that whatever you went through was really challenging and really hurt you. And I don't know what that is. I'm sorry that those things happened to you, whatever they were. And I'm here to help you if I can. And if you want, I know I can, but it's if you're comfortable with it. You have to find the person in the container that works for you. And that's part of the choosing. Okay. But I just want to reinforce you're doing a great job. I didn't address my stuff like you are. I let my stuff drag me down into chaos. So well done.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well done. I was still a disaster at 26. Complete and utter.
Yeah.
I think the term in the DSM-5 is shit show. I think that's like the clinical term that psychologists are using now. But thank you so much for joining me and chatting with me today, and keep in touch, reach out to me and let me know how I can support. Okay.
Thank you very much, Connor.
Okay. Thank you, sir. All right. Kalen, welcome to the show. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Good. I won't ask the obvious question that I already did. So with that in mind, maybe tell me a little bit about what you're hoping to get from this conversation. Is there a specific question that you have or something that you're trying to work on and get into?
I'm trying to work on more internal validation versus external validation, trying to connect more with people rather than impress, and seeking that kind of validation from them in the wrong words or the wrong terms.
Okay. So would you say that you seek validation in the wrong ways?
Yeah, I think it's more or less I seek it because I feel like I need it rather than just validating myself for who I am and what I've accomplished.
Okay. Tell me what that looks like. How do you seek validation from others?
Well, I try to impress people. Like I will talk about myself a lot, stories of things that I've done or things that I've, recently accomplished, and wait for that response of like, oh, that's amazing. That's great. You're doing awesome, blah, 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 rather than just being happy with the accomplishments or things that I've done for myself, and kind of connecting with the people that I'm talking to about what they've done and what they've accomplished,
Do you embellish?
Yeah, I think I do. Absolutely.
Can you tell that I've worked with some
externally
seeking validators in the past, or have been one myself? Yeah. Okay. Do you find yourself seeking external validation from specific people, or is it just everybody?
I would say it's kind of specific. I wouldn't say it's necessarily down to like one specific person, but definitely like people that I admire, authority figures, like bosses, also like in relationships, that validation from my partner.
Mm-hmm. What does validating yourself look like?
Self-love, I guess. Just understanding that, let me rephrase that. Self-love in the way that I can be validated knowing that I've done things that I'm proud of and that I can maintain my own sense and not have to have it from somebody else. And so just telling myself, I actually took kind of one of your recommendations from one of your YouTube videos, and I did a validation journal. Mm-hmm. Where I validate myself for, and this is important because, and I've been doing that.
How's that going?
It's actually pretty cool. I like it a lot.
Yeah, it works well, right? Okay. Yeah. Another question for you. Tell me, I don't know how to phrase this for you. Tell me who you found it impossible to either get validation and recognition from growing up, or who told you you weren't good enough.
Oh, that was my dad, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah. He had a secondary business venture. I tried to follow in his footsteps of that business venture to try to gain approval, and it didn't really pan out for me. But I was trying, and I didn't really realize it at the time, but it was definitely me trying to gain some sort of validation or approval of being enough for him.
Okay. So you tried to follow in his footsteps.
Yeah.
Okay. Say a little bit more about your relationship with him.
It was very like bro relationship rather than father-son. So a lot more of just like hanging out, like talking about just regular stuff rather than like actually like touching on anything like emotional. That I didn't feel like there was very much emotional safety at all, to be honest. And if there was any emotions that came out, they came out fierce and with a fire. There was a lot of amped up emotion rather than just healthy talk about it.
Okay. Take a breath in. Just take a
Yeah.
breath. Take a breath. You're good.
I'm good. I'm good.
Just take a nice deep inhale through the nose. Yeah. Say what's happening in your body as you talk about your dad.
Anxiety.
What else?
Kind of like sadness.
Yeah. What's the anxiousness about?
Just like remembering what it felt like. Just like not feeling worthy, not feeling like I was enough, and always constantly trying to gain that approval and never succeeding. Just, it doesn't feel great.
Okay. Another breath. No. I really just want you to slow everything down.
Okay.
Okay. My guess is that inside of you, if I could take myself and everybody listening, and we could go into your mind and feel what it's like to be in your body, it would probably feel like things move pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So just take another breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And then say what the sadness is about.
Not feeling loved.
Right.
Pretty
So-
straightforward.
Yeah. Say what that was like. To not
It
feel
was
loved
frustrating.
by. Well, say what it was like to not feel loved by somebody specifically that you were desperately trying to get loved by. Because, and I'll just pause you there and just say one more thing. That is the exact pattern that's unfolding inside of you still. So say what that was like with him.
I guess it's kind of hard to put into words for me, but just felt like almost like I didn't belong, like there was something wrong with me. And I didn't know what it was, and nobody was going to help me find it. So I was just kind of lost.
Okay. All right. What's happening inside of you as you say that?
A lot.
Well, let it affect you. Just let it
Yeah.
hit you a little deeper.
I mean, I've been working a lot on like self-soothing, so I'm trying to kind of just internally remind myself that none of that is actually true.
None of what's actually true.
That I'm not lost. That there is nothing wrong with me. That I'm actually a pretty awesome guy. And yeah, just I understand that that's what I went through, and that's where a lot of my internal hurt comes from, but it wasn't true. It wasn't true at the time, and it's not true now. And it still affects me. It's definitely shaped who I am, but I can, I'm working on reshaping that, healing that hurt.
Is your dad still alive?
Yeah.
What's your relationship like with him now?
Still pretty bro-y. He has come around to where he tries to be more emotionally involved and wants me to call him more and tell him about things that are going on in my life and how I'm doing mentally. And I try, but his responses aren't very good. So, I give him the benefit of the doubt. I know that he has a lot of hurt inside him too, and that there's things that he would need to heal in order to really be that father figure that, I wish that I had or that I could have had, but he's trying.
Okay.
I give him props for that.
Okay. Have you ever expressed any direct anger or disappointment to him?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. What's that usually sound like?
Me yelling, not healthy expression at all. I've dialed that back. That was years ago when I used to do that, but really, I don't really anymore. I don't really talk to him about it. It's been discussed a few times, and there's been some changes made, but I'm sure there's room for more growth there as well.
Two more questions,
Okay.
and then we'll see where this takes us. When was the last time you cried?
Saturday.
Okay. What was it about?
I wasn't really sure. I was feeling kind of sad, a little lack of motivation. I picked up the guitar and just kind of started picking. And next thing I know, I don't know if it was the melody I decided to play or what, but next thing I know, I'm crying playing my guitar.
Nice. Okay. The other question was, tell me about the cross around your neck.
I went to Christian school a long, long time ago, and definitely built a relationship with God, and I've been trying to kind of reconnect with him and find my faith again. And, just kind of in the building process still, but definitely believe in God, and I definitely think that he has a plan for me and that there's more to my life than what I've experienced so far, and that there's better things to come, and that he's helping guide me there.
What's that been like?
Ups and downs.
Okay.
Definitely, I can see a lot more of things that are happening in my life, and that rather than just if it's something that pushes me towards something, maybe it hurt me, but it caused me to, dive into myself and self-reflect that there was a purpose for that, and there was a reason. And even though it might not have been a pleasant time in my life, that it had its purpose.
Yeah. Okay. If you can't tell by now, I'm doing a lot of evidence gathering. And so I'm going to shift into a different gear now.
Okay.
A couple of things I think are important. All right. One is I want you to explore, I'm going to just give it an amalgamation of I'm going to give you some direction of things that you can do and take on. You don't have to do any of them. You choose whatever you want, right? This is just, this is more of an exploration than anything else in a very short period of time. One, I would encourage you to explore the concept of grace, both from a biblical sense and from a personal sense of what it looks like for you to be an embodiment of grace for yourself.
Okay.
When we grow up with a father who is the archetype of a tyrant, what could happen to you as a boy is you start to believe that life itself is, anything that's wrong in life itself is somehow your responsibility. Other people are upset you did something wrong. Boss is angry, because he got cut off in traffic, and somehow it evokes an emotion inside of you like, shit, what did I do? Or how can I fix this? Or everybody else's emotional state, well-being, and the world around you starts to take on the quality of you having something to do with it. And so the word for this is called omnipotence.
I know the word.
Yeah. So what starts to happen to young kids when they've experienced a lot of hostility when they're very, very young. And I think part of the reason why you've had a hard time getting out from underneath this is actually that a lot of what you're dealing with is precognitive, pre-language. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that part, okay? And I'm going to first give you a little bit of a homework assignment, and you can go back and watch all this so you can grab everything that I've given you, right? You don't have to try and remember it right now. Please go back and watch some of this and just take it all in, okay? Because I know I'm kind of turning the fire hose on a little bit, okay? So just acknowledging that. An assignment for you would really be about discussing what the first 3 years of your life, 3.5 years of your life looked like with your father. What was happening in your household? What was going on with him? What was the marriage? Were they married, your dad and your mom at that time?
Yeah, they got divorced when I was like 5 or 6. But.
Okay. And really start to explore what happened in that time period. Because in the first couple years of our life, there's some really important things that happen developmentally. And what can happen is that we can have events unfold that interrupt that development, so that whenever something gets activated in us later on in life, we move back developmentally, back down the chain. And for some men, what happens is that they're doing all this work and they're trying to change things and they're trying to fix things, but they can't really describe why they can't move through it. And it's like it's always escaping them. It just seems like this shadow that's bigger than them, that's haunting them, that they'll never get out from underneath of. And it kind of feels a little hopeless. And I'm not saying that you sound like you're hopeless by any means. Okay, it sounds like you have some good direction. Yeah. However, it does sound like with this part of you that there's a sense of like, I don't know if I'll ever get out from underneath this. Is that right?
Wouldn't disagree.
Yeah. So precognitive and pre-verbal just means that some of the things that interrupted and caused this pain happened before you have memory of it. So and I'm just going to give you 2 pieces of information and then we'll probably start to wrap this up, okay? Psychologically and developmentally from 0 to 18 months, that first period of life, we go through our nervous system, our brain starts to wire towards whether or not we're like our world is okay around us, right? So that's mom's nervous system, that's dad's nervous system, and we get a sense of like, is the world a safe place? You know, is my environment okay? Because as an infant at that age, there's not much difference, right? I have a 5-month-old right now, 6-month-old today, actually, and for her, there's no difference between her internal system and her external environment. They're both the same thing. So lots of hostility outside feels like lots of hostility inside. Lots of loud yelling outside feels like a lot of tumultuousness inside. It's sort of the same thing, okay? Then from 18 months to 3 years, and this is what I really want you to look into, is this different developmental stage of, am I okay? Am I all right? Or is there something wrong with me? And that's where I hear a lot of what you're talking about. A lot of what you're talking about is there something wrong with me? And I would imagine that if I followed you around and could hear your thoughts, there's this constant stream of hypervigilance, of tuning in to how other people interact with you. Am I okay? Did I F that up? Are they judging me? You know, like all that type of commentary. Is that right?
Yeah.
So that's usually pretty indicative that something happened in that period that was really jarring for you. Now, I'm not saying that it's like some big trauma. It might just, I say just very loosely, okay? It might just be that your father's anger was quite robust during that period of time. And it's very common because children are omnipotent. They don't know any better. They think that at that age, from 18 months to 3 years, they literally think that everything that happens outside of them is a reflection of them. So when you're in that developmental stage, what you're questioning is, am I okay? Dad's mad. What did I do wrong? Dad's yelling again. What did I do wrong? Right? Mom's crying. What did I do wrong? They're fighting. What did I do wrong? What's wrong with me? So if you were in an environment, and if your parents got divorced when you were 5, I would imagine that when you were 2.5, 3 years old, probably wasn't great at home.
Yeah, you'd be right.
So my guess is that you took on a lot of what was happening in your home environment to mean that there was something wrong with you and that you were at fault for the yelling and the arguing and the dysfunction.
Yeah,
okay.
I can see that.
So, couple things last thing I'm going to give you is I really want you to start to separate personhood from behavior. And what that means, and this is sort of very indicative of shame, right? Guilt says, I did something wrong. Shame says, I am wrong. And how we start to end that cycle is by starting to realize that I can do something bad or wrong and not be bad or wrong. I'm a good person who did some bad things. And you are a good person who has done some bad things. And that's okay. That's all right. Does that make sense?
That does make sense.
So I want you to practice that in real time, but I also want you to start to journal and go back, and look at some of the choices that you've made and just look at them and say, okay, that was bad. That was wrong. And that does not mean I'm a bad person. I'm a good person who did a bad thing. And here's the lesson that I learned. So you have to kind of extract the gifts and the lessons from those behaviors so that you can carry them forward into the present. Okay?
Okay.
Any final thoughts, comments, questions, snide remarks, as my old singing teacher used to say?
I just can't wait for my parents to see this. I'm sure they'll have questions for me.
Yeah, they'll be like, what are you talking about? But spend some time actually with your parents and ask them about what the first 3-4 years of your life was like. What was going on in the household? What were things like for you?
I think it'll actually open up some good communication with them.
Yeah, and it's not about blame. I want to make that super clear. It's not that you were wrong or they were wrong, they're bad, you're bad. It's not about that at all. It's just that the way that attachment works and the way that our brain wires and our nervous system wires in early life is very specific. And we're learning a lot about that in neuroscience and neurobiology in the last 10 years. And so our home environment has, in those first 3 years, a really big impact on us. Now, it doesn't mean that you're stuck like that.
Yeah.
Okay? So you're a good person that did some bad things and some wrong things. And there's one more thing there. Hold on. Yeah, and I think there's also, I want you to go and grab, do you have a copy of my book?
I don't.
That's okay. If you want, go grab a copy of the book, and there's a section around fathering yourself. That 3-year-old boy inside of you is still very active. That is questioning, am I okay? And it's very, very deep. It's not even really like a conscious thought. It's more of a nervous system response that happens first. It's a body up response.
Yeah.
So your body first sets off the alarm bells of oh shit, am I okay? Is something wrong with me? Am I all right? And then the mind starts to chatter afterwards. So just know that when that starts to happen, you need to breathe. That's why I got you to breathe and slow down. And just practice that as often as you can. And just take some deep breaths throughout the day, set an alarm if you need to, 10, 15 times a day, have it go off, take 3 to 5 deep inhales through the nose, longer exhales through the mouth. And you might even want to just create like a little saying for yourself, like, I'm okay. I'm okay.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with me. I'm all right.
Okay.
Or you might even want to take that opportunity to speak to that 3-year-old kid, like, you're good, buddy. You're okay. You're doing a good job.
Okay.
All right.
I'm happy to do that. I've been doing that actually.
Good. I do this with my boy all the time. Even after he's acted out, I'm like, when I say my boy, I mean, I have a 4-year-old son almost.
Yeah.
And so I practice with him, it's like, you're a good boy. You're okay. You're good. Because I can see it in him. He likes to make himself wrong, as we all do, right? It's like, oh, I did something wrong. It's like, no, you're 3. You don't know the world at all. So anyway, thank you very much. Follow up with me. Don't hesitate to DM me or send an email and, let me know how this is all going. And if you have any follow-up, okay?
Will do. Thanks, Connor.
Awesome, brother. Thank you so much. All right, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Connor. How you doing?
I'm good, man. How you feeling about entering into the Lions Den?
Well, definitely nervous. Haven't formally done any kind of podcast situation like this before, so excited, but a little nervous as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a different type of podcast, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely the context. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, tell me what brings you to my doorstep today. What caused you or called you to sign up to talk? Is there a specific question or challenge that you're facing that you want to get into?
So what brought me to actually, seeing your content and start following you was just kind of a realization of things that I was denying that affected me growing up in my childhood. And also kind of like attachment styles that I was looking into after a few recent events that kind of triggered a lot of kind of suppressed emotions, I would say.
Like a breakup or?
That was one, long-term breakup was one thing. And also before that, my father passed away as well, early 2024. So it'll be almost in 2 weeks, it'll be the 1-year anniversary of that. And then also a few months after that, me and my girlfriend, who were together for about 6 years, our relationship ended. So those events is what triggered a lot of me having to face kind of really hard stuff. And it's been probably one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. It's just, facing what in your book that I've started reading, you call the shadow, I think. So yeah.
You had mentioned in the intake that you have been having to admit to yourself that stuff from your childhood has affected you more than you wanted to believe or admit. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I think one big thing was my father not being present in my life for a majority of the time. He was always very, very good person. A lot of people liked him, but he just simply wasn't around. And he ended up, marrying somebody else, and that wasn't my mom, and had a family, or had stepchildren, and had a family there. So I think for a long time I would tell myself it's fine, it's not that bad, it's not affecting me until, and I kind of forgave him for not being around. When in my early 20s, I was like, he's not gonna come around and be the person I want him to be. So for me, I need to forgive him. And then after he passed, though, I just couldn't deny that it affected me as much as I was denying it was.
And you mentioned being emotionally distant from people in your life. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so again, that's just kind of one thing that I was kind of denying that affected me. But I think not having a father figure or feeling like I could have anybody I could rely on emotionally growing up, I think made me kind of feel like I couldn't reach out to people to talk about, things that I'm going through internally. So I think that kind of led me to be distant in friendships, as in not telling people things that I might have been feeling, friends, family, and in relationships, like basically like it didn't matter kind of how I'm feeling, or that I maybe had to be the strong person so that somebody else could come to me and not feel like I'm in a weak place, something like that. Yeah.
Got it. Why couldn't you rely on mom growing up?
So when I was, again, I don't have a whole, I have some memory, but when I was really young, my mom went to prison for 3 years when I was 3 years old. And then me and my siblings, we had to move in with some family friends. Again, I don't have a lot of memory from that. And then when she got out, she got us back, and she was doing well for the most part. But
Why'd she go to prison?
Drug-related charges.
Okay.
And then, once we got out, her boyfriend at the time was an alcoholic. He was a severe alcoholic, functioning, but severe. He wasn't necessarily mean or anything, but he wasn't like supportive emotionally. But she was busy, she had 4 kids, my siblings, me, my 2 brothers, my sister. So, and I'm the youngest out of the 4. So, she did the best that she could, I think, with what she had. Once she got out, her priority was taking care of us. So she was working, 2 jobs a lot of times, just not around a whole lot. So, and then she was sober for a little while, but then she ended up relapsing when I was in about 6th grade through junior high. So that was really hard on me too. So those were, some big reasons why I couldn't rely on mom growing up.
Well, relationships don't sound like they've been very safe or trustworthy in your life.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, relationships have been typically, I think a lot of times have led to a lot of people kind of just not showing up for me in the ways that I maybe needed, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean it's a very clear, like when people let themselves down, they also let us down, especially when they're when we're children. And I'm curious about, just in a few words, like in a sentence or two, what would you say was the main challenge in your long-term relationship?
Yeah, that's a that's a good question. I think, yeah, that's a tough one. I might need a second on that, but I think for me, yeah, just kind of fully putting everything that I could into it, like opening up, being vulnerable, and the challenge of, or feeling worthy as well, feeling like I'm, worthy of somebody loving me, I think.
Well, it's also, I mean, I think I would imagine that's probably on the surface, but I think if we scratched a little deeper, I think my guess is that there's probably a very deep unconscious fear of relationships because they're a threat. I mean, you have a pretty consistent history of relationships being unsafe, and there's some, I don't want to use like therapy speak, but there's some very real abandonment, that's very present in your life. Can you just do one quick thing for me?
Oh yeah, sure.
So okay, just try something. So take a deep breath in through the nose and exhale out the mouth. And then exhale. Good. And just do that 2 more times. And then exhale and soften the eyebrows. And last one. And just say what happens as you do that.
Yeah, definitely starting to relax a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, hold on. Before you say anything, take another one. And exhale. And then just say what it's been like for you to share your story, to share everything that you just shared.
Yeah, it's, feeling, a little tightness in my chest, and it's hard. Yeah, it's stressful. It's stressful.
What's stressful? Say what's stressful about it.
Just saying everything, but I've had this reaction before, but internally I'm like, what are you doing? What? Like, don't say anything. Don't just alarm, to say. Yeah, it's kind of unconscious, but I've been trying to work on this for the last, it's only been like a few months, so I'm still kind of a white belt, you would say, at this. I use that.
Well, just so you know, I follow what's the name? It's escaping me. There's a specific Brazilian jiu-jitsu instructor and team where they make their students stay white belts no matter what for 3 years.
Yeah.
So I follow that principle.
Yeah, no, that's great. No, yeah, I've been doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu for quite about 11 years now. So
nice.
But yeah, it's stressful for sure. But there's definitely definitely fear of abandonment. I think, like, in my relationship, kind of thinking, what's the point if you're just gonna leave me? Like, everybody's left me, kind of, or everybody's disappointed me. So what's the point of giving all that I can if I'm gonna be let down? I don't know.
Yeah, well, that sounds very true, and that sounds very sad.
Yeah, I try to be positive, but
Well, okay. Well, but let's not bypass what it actually is, right? Let's not bypass what it actually is, right? Because I think, I have, my son is almost 4,
Yeah.
and if your mom went to prison when you were 3, your father wasn't around. You spent 3 years with, it sounded like a family friend. Is that right?
It was so it was a family friend that lived in Georgia, and yeah.
So you got relocated?
Yeah, got relocated. And they, let's just say they weren't great caregivers, to say the least, as well. They were,
I bet.
not so much to me, I don't think, but they were, physically abusive. They would hit us, and just weren't, they just weren't nice people.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's just a lot, man. And I think it would just, if my son went through that, it'd be heartbreaking. Heartbreaking. And I really just want you to know that as a father, my heart breaks for you as a son who didn't have a father that showed up to protect him from that level of hardship. And that you deserved that. Like, you really deserved to have been protected.
Yeah. Thank you. I really appreciate that. That does mean a lot.
So just stay with it for a second, take a breath, and just let it affect you. Right? You deserve to be protected and loved. Say what happens inside, because I can tell it hits you, but I can also tell there's a little bit of a battle.
Yeah, for sure. Same thing, just that kind of tightness in the chest, getting a little warm, and a little shaky as well. But yeah.
Okay. So another inhale, and these 15 minutes conversations.
I know.
I'm like, this is not what I thought it was going to be, for sure. I definitely thought, I was like, oh, I'll do a call-in show and people ask questions.
I can only imagine. Yeah. But,
okay, here's what we're going to do, my friend. Okay. Oh man, like, I want you to know a couple of things. I'm just going to say a couple of things to you, and then I'm going to give you a couple of things.
Yeah.
All right. One, I don't pity you.
Yeah.
I don't pity you. Okay. I really want you to know that, because I think sometimes men can go through a lot of hardship and they stop themselves from really feeling the depth of their sadness and grief for what they went through, because they don't want other people's pity piled on top of the pain that they're already carrying.
I agree.
So I want you to know, I do not pity you. I feel heartbroken for what you went through as a boy. It's terrible. It's devastating.
Yeah.
Okay. The second thing I want you to know is, I get why you've been emotionally distant. Holy shit. Fucking, yeah. I mean, if anything makes sense, it's that you would that you would emotionally distance yourself from other people. Like, that is the most logical thing to do with the amount of hardship that you've been through in relationship. That makes total sense. Like, you've done a beautiful job protecting yourself. I bet you are such a good human being. You seem like such a nice guy with a good heart. And I think you've really done an incredible job protecting yourself from the hardship that you went through. I mean, the fact that you are not in a worse way is phenomenal.
Yeah. Honestly, I am very grateful for that as well. I know, I'm very grateful that I was able to luckily find fitness, jujitsu. I'm a fitness instructor now. I've been doing jujitsu, and I've had my have my shit, but I
got that.
Never got into heavy drugs or alcoholism. I drink once in a while with friends, but nothing off the rails, and I'm couldn't be more thankful for that, because a lot of people around me, family included, turn to drugs and alcohol, and that's one thing. I'm very thankful.
Well done to that. Okay, I know there's more to your story that that adds to it, but I just really wanted to acknowledge that. Okay, I get why you've emotionally distanced yourself. It's not a hall pass. I'm not saying you're off the hook. Now you have the opportunity to start to develop that emotional closeness. I think a couple of things. One, your emotional avoidance. I've been talking too much today. Your emotional avoidance is a protective strategy. Okay, it's actually a self-protection strategy. And so for you, what's going to be challenging moving forward, just so that you know exactly what's going to happen, is the closer you get to someone, the more intimate that you feel with them, what's likely going to unfold for the first little while is that you are going to feel a threat response.
Yeah.
Okay? You're going to feel a threat response. It's going to feel like, this is dangerous. This doesn't feel like something I want to do. And you are going to have to work against that natural automatic response mechanism in your body that is telling you that relationship and intimacy is dangerous.
Yeah.
Okay? And I would really encourage you to, you're single now?
Yes, I am. Mm-hmm.
Okay. When you start dating, I would encourage you to prioritize safety. And it might sound boring, it might feel boring at first.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But what I would encourage you to prioritize for a little while is finding people to date that you feel very safe with, and that you can begin to develop and repair that knowledge, not just cognitively in your brain, but somatically in your body, right? That you start to ingrain, kind of like in jiu-jitsu, if you want to do a rear naked choke or a certain arm bar or lock or whatever, you practice that over and over and over and over and over again until it's like your body knows what to do and it can just respond.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? The same thing is true with developing safety in relationship. And so I would encourage you to do a couple of things. One, I would encourage you to find a very good men's group. Okay? You could join the Alliance. There's other ones out there that I can recommend to you, like Everyman. They're good. The Nation. I mean, there's a bunch of them. So if you want a recommendation, DM me, or you can join the ManTalks Alliance that we have. There's like 800 guys in there. And I would encourage you to join that with the intention of starting to develop safety with other men and safety in relationship. My mentor has a saying, which is we're wounded in relationship and we have to heal in relationship. And so a lot of your healing is going to be done in tandem with other people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay? So try and find a really good men's group that you can be a part of. When you start to date for safety. And that will help you get a sense of like, oh, I can open up. I can be real. I can say how I feel about things. I can be honest that like, no, I don't want to go to that, stupid dinner party or whatever it is. Right? I can be honest about these things and my needs, and that I don't have to withdraw in order to just be in this relationship.
Yeah, definitely. That makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. Final thoughts, comments, questions. Do you have any questions for me? You're like, I have a book full.
I wish I wasn't blanking out at the moment.
That's okay. You're good. DM me, message me if you have questions.
Yeah, I think the men's group would be a great idea, and I think I think maybe when I am feeling that kind of, is there any steps you might take if I'm talking to somebody and I'm like, this is too safe for me, because I definitely, I think I've gone on one date with, or like one date with this person, and I kind of already felt that kind of, this person seems a little too stable. Like, why? I don't know. Yeah, and I know that's. Anyways, I know that's.
No, you're good. I really appreciate the honesty. Lean into it, and if anything, be candid. I mean, maybe tell them, like, go on another date, and maybe not on the second date, but like at some point say like, this feels uncomfortably safe for me.
Yeah.
And just be open about it and be like, this is actually foreign for me. Part of building really deep intimacy is that we start to reveal the hidden parts of ourselves that other people don't know about. That's the trick. And it's also the threat of intimacy, is that you start to reveal the parts of yourself that are hidden, that other people don't know, and that you are sort of sometimes afraid to reveal. And that's really at the core of love, is that we're fully known. Our psyche, our hearts, our soul, our body, we want to be fully known. But that's been unsafe. So call it out, and maybe it's not with this person, maybe it's a different person,
sure.
But use your discretion and your discernment of that, but call it out. Okay?
Right on.
All right, buddy. We're going to have to pause there. Thank you so much for joining me. This was a real treat. I appreciate you. And don't hesitate to reach out.
I really appreciate you, and all your work has definitely been helping me a lot. So keep up the good fight, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.